بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. لله تبارك وتعالى. Inshallah tabarak wa ta'ala, we're going to continue in our reading of the book Al-Maqasid, written by the great Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, the great Ash'ari Shafi'i Sufi master who lived in the 7th century Hijrah, whose books are a source of light for those with inner sight. It was mentioned about the great Imam Al-Habib Ahmed bin Hassan Al-Attas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu that he was physically blind, and he used to walk down the streets of the city of Hurayda, and he would point or indicate to the houses in which there were books of Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. And he was asked, Habib, how do you know the houses which have the books of An-Nawawi rahmatullah alayhi? He said, those houses, a light emanates from them which the people of inner sight can detect. Ahl al-Basira, they would detect that light. So may Allah allow us not only to benefit from the reading of this blessed text, but also allow us to perceive the spiritual light that comes from the book, and that light enters our heart, establish itself in it, illuminate us inwardly, so that outwardly we would travel the path to Allahu Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. With those noble intentions, inshallah, we begin with the section of As-Siwak. We're on page number 17. Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله
Sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
The tooth stick, siwak, 2.7. Using a toothstick or siwak, this is the definition from Reliance of the Traveler, a twig or the like on the teeth and around them to remove an unpleasant change in the breath or similar, together with the intention of performing the sunnah, is recommended except after noon for someone who is fasting. It is especially recommended for rising from sleep, performing the prayer, and any change in breath.
And where we should concentrate on as-siwak is doing al-wudu before washing up the mouth, And before entering the prayer, one of the scholars, he mentioned about the importance of the siwak, that his father was the imam in the masjid. And he was giving that position to lead the prayer to his son. So as his son stood to lead the prayer, the father was observing him. And as he was getting ready, the lines were lined up. He was getting ready to make the opening takbir. His father grabbed him and he said to him, "What are you doing, my son?" He said, "I'm going to lead the prayer." He said, "You're going to lead the prayer and you did not make siwak? You did not use the toothstick to cleanse your mouth before you were about to communicate to your Lord? You are not fit to lead the prayer." And he pulled him back, and the father led the prayer. The Sheikh, he said, from that day on, I kept two toothsticks, one in my side pocket and one in my coat pocket, so that whenever I would lead the prayer, I would always be reminded to use a siwak to that extent. The siwak before al wudu, before as you get to the mouth area, you can use it then. Mm. Now, so be keen, and you don't have to make a show of it. Just have it in your pocket or in your bag or in your purse, and every now and then make the intention to fulfill a sunnah and make a siwak. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is narrated that he said, "If I didn't think it would be a duty, become a duty on my nation, an obligation, I would have ordered them with the toothstick at every prayer." So this is a high sunnah that we should not leave out. And if you want to get a good reward, something we encourage people to do among our students, you can go get wholesale a box of them and make the intention to guide people to perform a sunnah that is highly recommended, and give them as gifts when you go to the masjid. When you go pray or when in your family, give everyone a siwak with the intention of them fulfilling the sunnah. And you will be the recipient of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, "Ad-dalu al khair kafa'ilihi." The one who indicates to good is as the one who did it. A lot of times there are a lot of good deeds we can do and they don't require a lot of effort, just to be present, and we could earn great rewards. So let's take advantage of those. Now, go ahead.
Causes of minor ritual impurity or hadath. 2.8 Ablution wudu is necessitated by, is nullified by, and must be renewed after any of the following four things termed causes of minor ritual impurity or hadath. If one wants to perform something that may only be done with ablution, such as the prayer, salah, touching the Quran, and so forth. Number one,
As you remember, we are studying according to the school of Imam al-Shafi'i, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So these things, they nullify the state of ablution. So if one is in the state of ablution and any of these occur, that person now is muhdith, is in a state of hadath, in a state of minor ritual impurity, which is lifted by the ablution. So if one is in the state of ablution and any of these occur, that person now is muhdith, is in a state of hadath, in a state of minor ritual impurity, which is lifted by the ablution. So if one is in the state of ablution and any of these occur, that person now is muhdith, is in a state of minor ritual impurity, which is lifted by making ablution, which we talked about, I believe. No, we didn't talk about the obligations of ablution yet, which would be coming next. Mm.
Number one, anything that that exits from the front or rear private parts. Number two, loss.
Except al-mani. Al-mani is the sexual fluid of the male or the female. That does not nullify ablution, but it necessitates the purificatory bath. Mm.
Number two, loss of intellect. This is from Reliance of the Traveler, meaning the loss of the ability to distinguish whether through insanity, unconsciousness, sleep, or other. Loss of intellect excludes drowsing and daydreaming, which do not nullify ablution. Among the signs of drowsing is that one can hear the words of those present, even if uncomprehendingly, unless one falls asleep while firmly seated. From Reliance of the Traveler, on the ground or other surface firm enough to prevent a person's breaking wind while seated on it asleep, and remains that way until one wakes up. Number three, contact between the skin of a man and that of a woman, husband and wife, for example, when they are not legally permanently unmarriageable to each other or mahram.
So that person, that male or female, is not mahram, is not marriageable, an unmarriageable kin. Mm.
And there is no barrier, such
Mm.
as a layer of cloth between them. Number
Here, a difficulty, as a side note, that we run into a lot, especially in America and interacting in, job meetings or events, is even though touching the skin with a barrier or touching the non-marriageable person with a barrier does not nullify ablution, it is still unlawful. So shaking hands, even with a barrier, is unlawful between marriageable people of the opposite sex. So try to get in a habit of informing people when you know you're in these types of circumstances that this is a rule in the religion, but it doesn't entail any form of disdain for the other or belittling of the other, meaning the opposite gender. Mm.
Number four, and touching human private parts, the genitals or anus, with the palm or inner surfaces of the fingers. From Reliance of the Traveler, example, those surfaces that touch when the hands are put together palm to palm.
Like this, if you went like this and you press, everything that touches, if it touches the private part, it would nullify wudu or ablution without a barrier. Mm.
Ablution is not nullified by vomiting, letting blood, nose bleeding, laughter during the prayer, eating camel meat, or other things not discussed above.
So these four things are those things in the Shafi'i school which necessitate al-wudu. So we should all know them and master them well. Why I mention and master them well? They're not a lot. Because we should get in the habit as we learn, especially this knowledge, which is a personal obligation, share it with others. It is not surprising that many of us have never had the opportunity to sit with a teacher and go over all of the rules of the religion that we practice every day. So take it uh, as a necessity to learn preserve, and convey. Mm.
2.9. When certain that minor ritual impurity or hadath has occurred, but uncertain whether one subsequently lifted it with ablution, then one is in a state of minor ritual impurity, because in sacred law, a state whose existence one is certain about does not cease through a state whose existence one is uncertain about.
So that's a general rule. The state of certainty is not removed by doubt. So that's a general rule in the sacred law. Whenever there's a state you're certain about, that state is not removed by a state that you are doubtful about. This can be an easy way for us to avoid eating unlawful meat. Originally, you know for certain that this animal was alive, and it only becomes permissible to eat when you are certain that it was slaughtered Islamically in the proper manner. If you have a doubt about that, then don't eat that meat, because your doubt does not remove the state you are certain about. That animal was alive. And if I'm not sure it was slaughtered properly, that means, in terms of me, it is unslaughtered dead meat, which is unlawful to eat. Until I am certain that it was slaughtered properly. That's just an additional benefit to the rule. In this case, we're talking about ablution. If you were in the state of ablution, you're sure about that, but you doubt, did I break my ablution? The rule is you are still in ablution. If it was the opposite way, you were sure you were in a state of ritual impurity, but you're not sure you lifted it by making ablution, then you are still in a state of ritual impurity and need to make ablution.
When certain that one had ablution, but uncertain that it was subsequently nullified, then one still has ablution. Ablution, wudu. 2.10. The obligatory integrals, rukun, arkan, one of the legally essential elements found within an action that compose it, of ablution are A, to
So
have.
whenever we're talking about acts of worship, we need to know three basic things: the conditions, the integrals, and the invalidators. The conditions are those acts which must be fulfilled before the deed can begin in a valid manner. The arkan, or the integrals, are a part of the act that must be maintained for the act to be valid. And the invalidators are those things, if they occur, the act will become nullified. At minimum, for the validity of your worship, you need to know those things. So this is talking about the integrals of wudu, the arkan, which are a part of the ablution process. But they're the obligatory parts.
A, to have the intention, from Reliance of the Traveler, when one starts to wash the face. B, to wash the face.
So the intention in the Shafi'i school coincides when the water touches the first part of the face. So when you lift the water to your face, at that point, you intend the obligation of al-wudu, or ablution.
B, to wash the face, meaning from the point where the hairline usually begins to the tip of the chin in height and from ear to ear in width.
So from here to here, and from here to here, and then this whole area. And out of precaution, you extend a little in each direction to ensure the entire face is washed.
C, to wash the arms from the fingertips up to and including the elbows. If dirt under the nails prevents the water of ablution or the purification purificatory bath or ghusl from reaching the skin beneath, the ablution or bath is not valid. The same is true of water, glue, paint, nail polish, and so forth on the nails or skin. If it prevents water from reaching any part of the nails or skin, no matter how small, one's ablution or purificatory bath is not valid.
Because it is a condition for the validity of purification that there is no barrier between the parts that must be washed. Uh, there are two things that we should highlight. Ensure that there is from the fingertips of the hand, all up to and including the elbow. So the elbow must be washed. And to ensure that, you wash a little bit up, right? Sometimes people are not careful about this and they miss part of the elbow. If they do that, then the ablution is invalid and hence the prayer would be invalid. So be cautious and wash well. And that is only as an obligation one time. For our sisters and some brothers who do things like manicures and other than that, ensure that the material or polish that they use is not of the type that water cannot penetrate. They do have, as they claim, absorbent polish, meaning the water goes through it. My advice to you is to ensure that it's correct before you use it and to make sure you apply it properly. Don't sacrifice your ablution for outward beauty and adornment. My advice would be to not make that a possibility of ruining your acts of worship. That's my advice. But if you believe that it is as they say, just be sure. And caution is always better. The one who is religiously cautious will never regret. Mm.
D. To wipe some of the head or scalp with wet hands or wet in any other fashion. E. To wash the feet up to and including
So
the
to what? Wet wipe the head, right, with one's wet hands, even if it is one hair within the limit of the head. Mm. That
E.
means applying moisture to the head. Mm.
E. To wash the feet up to and including the ankle bones.
And do not forget the ankle bones, because sometimes when people are making ablution, they are negligent in this. Mm.
F. And to do these things in the
Mhm. So all those obligatory parts must be done in that order. Mm.
2.11. The Sunnahs of ablution wudu are 1.
So these are things that if you do them, you are rewarded. But if you leave them out, you are not sinful.
1. To begin with the Basmala, the words Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, most merciful and compassionate.
As for perfume, the issue with perfume is if it has alcohol, but it has nothing to do with being a barrier. If it has alcohol, the strict opinion in the school is that it is najis. So you have to remove it before you can pray. So if you spraying it all over your clothes, then you have a problem there. So I would recommend to you to find non-alcoholic perfume or deodorant or any of those things. Not non-alcoholic, that which does not contain alcohol.
Number 2, to wash one's hands 3 times before dipping them into the water container. Number 3, to rinse out the mouth and nose 3 times. One takes in a mouthful from a handful of water and snuffs up some of the rest of the handful into the nostrils, swishing the water around the mouth and expelling the water of the mouth and the nose simultaneously. Then again rinses the mouth and then the nostrils from a second handful of water, followed by rinsing the mouth and then the nostrils from a third handful of water. Number 4, to cover the entire
This
scalp.
is a sunnah way, but other ways is valid as well.
Number 4, to cover the entire scalp area when wiping the head with wet hands. Number 5, to wipe the ears inside and out with new water 3 times, then the ear canals with one's little finger with more new water 3 times. Number 6, to interlace the fingers when washing one's hands to ensure that water reaches between them and saturate between the toes. Using the little finger of the left hand, one begins with the little toe of the right foot, coming up through the toes from beneath, and finishes with the little toe of the left. Number 7, to saturate one's beard, if thick, by combing it from beneath with wet fingers. Number 8, to begin with the right when washing arms and legs, but not the hands, cheeks, and ears, which are washed or wiped as with the ears, right and left simultaneously. Number 9, to wash or wipe, if called for, each part 3 times. The obligatory minimum is once, though the sunnah is to perform them each 3 times. Number 10, to wash the parts of the body successively and without pausing between them. Though if one pauses between them, even for a long time, one's ablution is still valid without renewing the intention.
وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, we'll stop there. These issues are extremely important. Please review them well. Make sure you understand the cases and share them with others. We have to make a culture in our communities that everyone who is morally responsible knows the basic obligations of Al-Islam. And keep in mind that access is not available for many people in the proper way of learning, which is to learn from a knowledgeable teacher and a trustworthy book. So it is important that we facilitate for people to learn in that manner. the great Imam Muhammad ibn Sirin, he said, verily, this knowledge is the religion. So look well from whom you take your religion. He was from the generation of at-tabi'in, the followers of the companions. And Imam Muslim, rahimahullah, has a section into introduction of his book As-Sahih about this issue. One cannot learn Islam on one's own by reading books. Rather, the knowledge of the religion is taken from its people in the proper methodology. From its people and the proper methodology. We are living in a time where the proper methodology of acquiring knowledge through an unbroken chain of narrators, really taking knowledge from that, from teacher to teacher to teacher, back to authors, in the methodology of the people of that chain. Please put that in your notebooks, highlighted. Not only do we take our knowledge of the religion through a chain of narration, not only that, but we also follow the methodology of the people of that chain. So it is not that we have met scholars who have met scholars, but what we're doing is different from what we receive from them. This is a big problem in our time, right? The person may have actually heard from a trustworthy teacher, but what they're conveying is not the methodology of the teachers and scholars in that chain of narration. And this is a problem. So when we say the trustworthy, knowledgeable teacher who actually follows the methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. In their foundations and in the details of the religion. So the actual methodology and the actual rules. So if we're learning a particular madhab, we follow that madhab as it has been conveyed. We don't say, I'm following this school of thought, this madhab, but within the madhab, I'm doing my own amateur ijtihad. So I'm deciding within a madhab, I'm deciding the person who's not at that level of weighing opinions, which opinion is stronger than the other. This is a level of scholars who are well informed about one madhab, let alone between four madhabs. So this is something that I remind myself and you about. Verily, this knowledge is the religion. So look well from whom you take the religion. And knowing what books are trustworthy and reliable within every madhab, so that you know these relied upon books represent the madhab. This is very important. Our tradition is one of following, not innovating. Our tradition, al-sunnati wal jama'ah, is one of following, not innovating. So this is extremely important. And we need to make it the standard in our communities. And that takes a lot of work. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. But it takes actually us to be like that ourselves. And that's why, really, that's why we are extremely strict in mentioning what is the methodology that we follow. So when we say we are Ash'ari in Aqidah or Maturidi, what is understood from that is that well, our teachers were Ash'ari. The books that we learned from represented the Ash'ari school or Maturidi and the Maturidi school. And we don't depart from that. Nor do we attribute to the school that which is not of it. Likewise in fiqh, if we are Hanafi or Maliki or Shafi'i or Hanbali, we follow the madhab as it is and the relied upon books within the madhab. This is not something that we need to do a lot of work to figure out. The madhahib of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah are well established. Well established. The books that are the main reliable sources within the school are well known. And the methodology is well known. I warn us of a sedition of the time where people are destroying the madhahib inside of the madhahib or in the name of the madhahib. So we should be cautious about that. Not every Ash'ari is truly Ash'ari. Not every Maturidi is truly Maturidi. Not every Hanafi is truly Hanafi. Not every Maliki is truly Maliki. Not every Shafi'i is truly Shafi'i. And not every Hanbali is truly Hanbali. How are we going to distinguish the difference? What are the reliable books in the madhab? What have the scholars of the madhab conveyed with an unbroken chain? And to that we follow, we adhere to. So it's not sufficient to say, I am following a madhab, but the rules of that madhab are not applied properly. The religious judgments that have reached us through the chains of narration and the reliable books are altered. This work was done by the great scholars in every school. And that work of weighing opinions is the work of highly qualified scholars within the school. And they are well known, like Imam al-Nawawi, like Imam al-Ramli in the Shafi'i school, or like Al-Imam Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, or like Al-Rafi and others. So I should have said An-Nawawi and Al-Rafi and Ibn Hajar and Al-Ramli or Ash-Shirbini. These great imams have done that work. And the Shafi'is have accepted their judgments to this day. So, and that is in every school. So that's the details. But these foundational things, we all must learn and convey. Insha'Allah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. I remind you tonight of the Black Imams Roundtable. We will continue with our series of talks on when the rubber meets the road. But we will move to the subject of at-tasawwuf, Sufism. And it is important, as we talked about al-aqidah and al-fiqh, how to practically live it, really for us, especially in this time, we need to understand the basic principles of at-tasawwuf, the usul of at-tasawwuf. Because we need those principles, especially in the time of fitna. And we are definitely living in a time of sedition and calamities and trials and tribulations. So we should learn how we should act in these moments. None of us are perfect. We're going to fall short. But we should have in front of us guiding principles. Because tasawwuf or Sufism is how to be inwardly and outwardly, how to be. So that will be the talk tonight. In addition, we will give some guiding principles, or let's say guiding characteristics that we need to have as this conflict in the Middle East escalates and spreads. What advices do we have as Black imams to our communities and to Muslims, especially living in the West? What do we believe should be our activity? So, and it's related to tasawwuf, right? But we need some instructions, inshallah. So, inshallah, tonight at 7 o'clock, we'll see you all for the Black Imams Roundtable. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. بارك الله فيكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.